Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie, with a cup of tea. And I'm still on my love mug. Don't know where my Vicky Marie Chats mug is. It must be in the washing up. So we try and keep the love going, hey, from Valentine's Day, though. It's difficult, isn't it? Okay, now, in this video, I'm going to talk to you, or we're going to go through a podcast that I found. About the Samantha Murphy case, which is still ongoing. So it's important to remember what this is all about. This is all about Samantha Murphy, who a week ago, not last Sunday, the Sunday before, supposedly went jogging just nearby her house and just did not come back, and is still missing up to the date of me making, or the time of me making this video. We're constantly waiting for news, for some developments that she'll be found safe and well, maybe tripped over, maybe hurt somewhere, maybe she was abducted but she'll be released. You know, the thing is, there's a family there that don't know what's happened to their mum. There's 3 children, don't know what's happened to their mum. Samantha is 51 years old, and nobody knows where she is. So I've been covering this case. I've been giving you whatever updates there might be. There's been press conferences. There's been an appeal, very, very impassioned appeal from her daughter for her to come home. Her husband, Mick, also spoke in that brief press conference. But really, apart from then, very sadly, one of her dogs, Ruby, also went missing, and then apparently was run over and had to be euthanized. So it's all been very, very tragic for that family. Her family, I reported this morning that a couple of members of her family have said that they think it may have been a stalker. Could have been a stalker. If she went on regular runs, regularly every day, it could have been somebody that's watching her. It's not thought that it's money orientated, because although apparently, they're a well-to-do family with a business, etc., there's been no request for ransom or anything like that. No sign of any money disappearing, as far as we know, no sign of any money disappearing out of her accounts. The police will be looking at all that. Anyway, she was wearing a Apple Watch. We haven't heard anything about that yet. Police haven't released any details. She had a mobile phone with her, which apparently pinged very much later on that day at a phone tower. And that basically is that. So let's just have a quick look at Samantha. Just a couple of photos of her. I haven't quite perfected how to leave, I haven't quite worked out how to leave photos up. Because I'm going to be showing the podcast, so I haven't quite worked out how to. Why is that? That's the wrong one. Hang on. Yeah, I haven't quite worked out how to do some of these things. Oh, right. Okay, sorry. It's just me being me with technology. It was so easy, and I didn't. Anyway, so here's some pictures of Samantha. This was her poor daughter Jess, very visibly upset. This is her husband Mike comforting her at the press conference. This is Samantha herself, and here we have the last CCTV of her that morning. And that's it, basically. You know, every day we're hoping for news. There's very little news, just bits of bits of news. There was a lot of consternation over the picture of Mick smiling at the police station, but you know, we shouldn't read too much into that because we just don't know what the circumstances were. It would have been a smile of relief. We don't know anything. Apparently, you know, they had a happy life from what people are saying. But again, you don't know what's going on behind. So basically, we don't know. We don't know what's happened to Samantha yet. And we're just every day waiting for news and for some resolution for this family, especially the daughters. So then, as I was looking today, so every morning, every evening, I'm looking for some news. To see if there's anything to report, anything, because it's been really nice actually, because in the sense of, you know, reporting on this from a distance, but a lot of people actually in the area have been, you know, sent me messages, left comments to say thank you, you know, for covering it, because the thing is, when we just hear, you know, it's just what I've said, or if someone disappears, a woman disappears on a normal routine, it affects everybody one way or another, because to us as women, it's like, oh my God, you could just go walking like that and disappear into thin air. Oh, as Mick said, people don't just disappear into thin air. Somebody somewhere knows something. That is 100% certain. So, yeah, while we're waiting for the police are doing their job, I'm sure. It's all very quiet at the moment. That normally means that something's going on. They scaled back the search of the trail where she was supposedly went for a run, which to me speaks volumes, because even now, if she, you know, after however many days it's been, it's coming up to 2 weeks really, but she could still be alive somewhere there. So the fact that they've scaled down that search and they're not actively looking for her in that area where she might have had an accident, she may be lying, you know, she'd be in a bad way by now, but she still may be lying somewhere very badly injured but still alive. So, you know, she could have fallen down a mine shaft. You know, the thing is, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think the police would have scaled back the search unless they were pretty certain that she was not there. So while I was, you know, doing my usual sort of looking around, seeing if there's any news, anything that I want to pass on to you guys that I think you'll be interested in and that you'll find useful in this story, and I came across this podcast and I found it really interesting. I haven't listened to the whole thing. I've only listened to the beginning of it, but I liked it because, well, to have an Australian view on it, you know, is nice. And I've never seen this podcast before. There's lots of brilliant podcasts out there, aren't there? And this is called Loose Units, The Shadow Files. And these are the podcasts. So it must be a book, the true crime book, Loose Units, out now in Penguin Publishing. And it seems to be this guy and his father, they've got like connections to the Australian police. I think his father was a policeman. So they're having a chat about this case. And I think they offer up some interesting ideas. They're chatting, you know, it's nice. It's not, when I say nice, you know, they're not casting aspersions on the family or the husband or anyone. They're just discussing the various options as it from their experience, you know, what would be going on behind the scenes. So it's interesting, I think. So that's what we're going to listen to, and I'm going to comment on it.
A weekly spin-off podcast. I'm Paul Verhoeven. That's John Verhoeven. Dad used to be a cop in the 1980s in Sydney, and I am an author who wrote several books about him. Just for those of you who have somehow missed the boat on that. Listen, last episode we mentioned in passing the case of a Ballarat woman who's gone missing. Her name's Samantha Murphy. This is one of those things, folks, where a lot of you are talking about it. We're getting messages about this case. It's very, very much ongoing. It's early days. It's literally being talked about in the news right now. So we thought we'd check in. Dad, you've been following this case somewhat. So Samantha Murphy went missing. The Victoria Police are talking about her. She's from Ballarat. She's 51 years old. She went missing at about 7 a.m. on Sunday, February the 4th, and she's not been seen since then. So this is, like 11 days ago. So what are your thoughts on this, Dad? And
so let me just say, I think they recorded this on, I think it was yesterday. Yeah. So, and he did say at the beginning that at some point he says, we're recording this now, things might change. Oh, it says it in the description. Ballarat woman Samantha Murphy has gone missing. John and Paul weigh in on the case, with John throwing some theories out there. But no, as this is an evolving case recorded days ago, things may have changed in the intervening period. Well, nothing has changed, I don't think, from when they did this.
bear in mind, again, the cement is very much still wet. She's still missing. Talk me through your insights into this case.
That's a bit of an unfortunate expression you use there. The cement is still wet.
I'm very much aware that everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's talking about it, both here and overseas. It's a long time to be missing. It's a tight community, as is very evident by the number of volunteers that spent a long time, on horseback, motorbike, foot, bicycle, car, four-wheel drive.
I think this is good to have this sort of unique insight, if you like. As far as I'm concerned, living in Spain, I don't know what it's like to live in a community like that in Ballarat, which not only, it's in Australia. They have their unique, it's like people don't know what it's like to live in a little village in Spain until you've done it and lived there, and what, people, the culture of that village. So it seems like, yes, there was, and still is, I think, people from the actual area volunteering to search, etc., wanting to help. It was very hot as well. So I think sometimes you can't understand, because, of course, even here in Spain, where it does get really, really hot, but we're in winter at the moment, so we're only on 15 degrees as I'm recording this. But, in Australia, it's boiling hot. So that is what adds the extra concern about her, if she had, come to an accident or something had happened actually in the bush or in the woods, because, she would have dehydrated quite quickly because it's just so hot. So there's, we have to get our head around this. It's different, from searching in a small place, or not Riley's up here again too. Yeah, he's really sort of soft at the moment. He keeps trying to get up and
the aircraft aspect of this particular case is made very difficult because of the canopy.
Yeah,
you can't see down onto the floor. I do have my own theories.
Just to put things in context, she was going for a jog. So basically,
Correct.
I mentioned before she went missing on the morning of February the 4th. She's from Ballarat and she left the house for a jog. Now, she's a mother of three. A lot of people are really, really concerned. And there's massive searches going on right now. People are trying to figure out where she went. They're using CCTV. They're talking to witnesses. But yeah, she was going for a jog. And as a jogger, Dad, I'm curious as to how long somebody would have to be gone before you wondered where they were. You've dealt with missing persons cases before, haven't you?
I have. And while I was doing research, I've been following this case since day.
And that's a very interesting question. I do like their, I like this, the way they're like having a chat. I like to have a chat, and this is how they sound. It's very casual, but they're discussing things between them, father and son. I like the way they're discussing it. And that was a very interesting thing that he said, because just in general, how long do you wait? If you think now your partner, your child, your, adult child, or somebody, that friend said to you, all right, I'm just popping out for a jog or a walk, or I'm just going to pop out and walk the dog. How long do you think? How long do you wait? before you'd suddenly think, oh, hang on a minute. You wouldn't notice at first, would you? It just, my son goes out jogging. So if he went out jogging, I think half an hour, I would probably think, that's funny, he hasn't come back yet. But yeah, he might have got talking to someone. But certainly if it got to an hour, knowing your family, your friends, your relatives, knowing my son, I would think, no, I don't think an hour that he would be out there talking to someone. He just wouldn't, now somebody else might, you might know them, that your loved one maybe, they may do that, but I know my son wouldn't do that. So I think when it got to an hour, because normally when it goes through, you think where they normally go for a run. Now she was going for a run on this trail. Now apparently, so I've heard, again, you've got to be careful what you hear, because sometimes things aren't true, but from what people are saying on the Facebook groups, etc., she would normally go for a 20-kilometer run. But that particular morning, she went for a 10-kilometer run because there was a family brunch organised at 11 o'clock. Now, there's been mention of this, but again, the police have not confirmed this. Police haven't confirmed anything, really. I think it'd be quite nice if the police did come out and confirm, at least to the time of me making this video. It'd be quite nice if the police did come out and confirm things, because otherwise you get all this speculation that they tell you not to do. So yeah, I presume if they were having a family brunch at 11, you'd be thinking, well, she'd be back in plenty of time for that, to have a shower, to get ready. Maybe she was cooking it, so if she went out between 7 and 7:30, she had plenty of time, didn't she, to go for a run, even for an hour, and come back. So I don't know when the alarm was raised exactly. I don't know who phoned the police. But it's an interesting thought, isn't it, to ponder on. How long would you wait before because you wouldn't once phone the police, because you'd know, oh God, you can phone the police next minute, she's just going to come in and say, well, what did you phone the police for? So, yeah, interesting thought.
There are some very, very unusual aspects. But then while I was doing research, I then came across an equally tragic case of an unsolved similar situation that occurred 41 years ago, and the family to this day are still reliving that traumatic day. It's a tight community. It's an affluent suburb of Ballarat. It's sort of got this beautiful sort of semi-rural, big blocks of land, big homes, swimming pools. It was going to be a very, very hot day. I believe, Paul,
it's interesting to get that insight as well into Ballarat and what kind of a place it is.
You've experienced some fairly warm days in Victoria.
Oh my God, yeah. It was about 38, 39, 40 a couple of days ago. Yeah, I was struggling.
Terribly hot.
Yeah.
So Samantha, very sensibly, she's obviously a very strong-willed woman. Strong-willed in the sense from her friends and colleagues, family have said she's emotionally and mentally very strong, but also physically very strong. To plan on a 14-kilometre.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because even her daughter said that at the press conference. She said, Mum's a very strong woman. She actually pointed that out. So I suppose in the thought of if she had come to an accident like in the bush, that she was strong and she was fit and she would get through it that way. So yeah, everyone seems to be saying she's strong, as he said, physically and mentally.
Sort of cross-country through the forest run on a Sunday morning, that takes some effort. She's obviously very, very well sort of versed in all the aspects, but the key to this, as to the time she left on that Sunday morning, she had an engagement, a family engagement, around about 11 a.m. that morning, but she left that early because of the heat. That was the time of the day where it was still relatively cool. She could get the run in, and she's a seasoned runner. The Victorian Police Force, they have been very guarded in their commentary. Then within the last 24 hours, the Commissioner of Police, who would be under a lot of pressure.
Oh, yeah.
He made a very interesting comment, because the police line to this day has been that it's not a suspicious situation. I find that, look, we're not privy to all the ins and outs, but seems like an odd thing to say. But then the Commissioner almost contradicted his police force and made the opinion that the fact that she hasn't been seen for so long is in itself suspicious.
Which, of course, it is. It's not. It is suspicious not to be seen for so long. Well, especially now that they've searched so much and not found any trace. But obviously, as well, I think it'd be to do with the data that they've got on the phone, etc.
Then he said, however, this is my opinion, which is an interesting thing to say.
Yeah.
Yes, it's his opinion, but he's basically then saying that is not necessarily the opinion of the police force in which he's in charge of. I found that interesting. There's also a ex-homicide squad detective with 30 years under his belt, and he's already started to offer his opinion very publicly, including
This is Charlie Bizzini, isn't it?
on the national broadcast of the ABC, giving his opinion, because turns out that a year ago there was a woman jogging in that vicinity.
Oh boy.
And she was bashed badly. She was actually bashed to the point of being knocked unconscious.
I think this is very relevant, and it's funny how when the person who bashed that woman was never found, and she's very critical of the police. She says they didn't look into it enough. So it was a year ago, more or less the same area, a woman bashed on the head or bashed in the face by a man with a stick with a rock tied to it. But so also it was very strange, because she doesn't say she was robbed. I don't think she was RAPD'd. So why would he do that just for the sake of bashing her in the face, with no motive? It's quite strange, isn't it? And leaving her unconscious. But hey, there's some strange people out there.
The person used a weapon that was a rock tied to a stick, which to me is bizarre in the extreme. In all my experience, I've never encountered. It's clearly a homemade weapon. And the fact that this particular person had no shoes on, no shirt, and then you take into consideration the homemade weapon, what would you be?
No, I didn't know that. That's news to me. I knew about this case, but I didn't realise I had no shoes on and no shirt. In the bush where there's snakes, poisonous snakes, and I imagine poisonous spiders.
Be thinking, Paul, out in the middle of nowhere, as to perhaps the background of this particular person.
I'm really not sure, but enlighten me.
I feel,
Yep.
and I don't know whether this angle has been pursued, but it could be a person sleeping rough, could be a person who actually lives in that particular forest. And that's very, very plausible.
Huh.
There are people that live rough, incredibly concealed.
Yeah.
I know places that I've been involved with my when I was in the police force in my forensic investigations. I remember a case we did up at the National Park on the Northern Beaches, up near the Baha'i Temple in Terry Hills. And I remember we were walking through the bush. We were following a lead. This was rugged, deep, dense bush. We literally had to cut our way through it. And we came across what I would describe as a very beautifully and orderly maintained dwelling. Someone lived there. When we went and discovered this permanent camp, this is someone that's just opted out of society. They can come back and get food. They're entitled to benefits. They can use a public telephone. They can go to the
I'm just wondering, how are they entitled to benefits though if they haven't got a fixed address? Because you can't put, number 3 tree in Ballarat Forest or whatever is your address. I don't know how the system works in Australia, but in Britain, I think, wouldn't you need a fixed address before you could claim? There are homeless people can claim benefits, but anyway, it reminded me of the last time that I was in Reading, which was a couple of years ago. I went to visit a friend, and we went for a walk in the woods. And there were, he says he described that dwelling as very well maintained. This particular one that we saw, it wasn't well maintained, but it had been fashioned around a tree. They'd put other logs and twigs and things around a tree, made like a teepee, if you like, around the tree. The tree is the center of it. And you could tell that somebody had been sleeping in there at some point. We didn't go and look too close. We just saw it as we walked through the woods, because it does give you the creeps a bit. I'm glad that I wasn't on my own when I saw that. But, people do sometimes they opt out of society, or it truly may, some people, they have got nowhere to live these days. There's so many more homeless people now, certainly in the UK anyway. But maybe they've decided to go off grid, or maybe they just really do not have anywhere else to go. But yeah, it's perfectly logical to think there may be people living in that woods.
Local Commonwealth Employment Service office to get their benefits once a fortnight. That they can go to a hospital. They can do all of that, but they can choose to live in the bush.
Oh.
And I've seen the photographs of the woman that was bashed unconscious a year ago, and it's a serious assault. When she regained consciousness, again, she was a runner. She managed to then jog 3 kilometres. She got back to her motor vehicle. She called 000.
Yeah.
And the police came in and they carried out an extensive search. The homicide detective today is saying that, hopefully the police, and I'm quite sure, look, to me it's a no-brainer. They would be exhausting every possible avenue. But it's still, I think it had a bit of a sort of a national, did you feel a bit funny when you found out that they were scaling everything down, but the public didn't want it to scale down?
Yeah, it's odd. Every case I read right now about a case that has gone wrong, when you look back at a true crime case, Dad, and they talk about the police handling of it, and you're sitting there going, no, what are you doing? It's shocking how often I have that reaction. And I'm not assuming that it's an easy job, but I think this is one of those cases where I'm watching, and we are watching in real time, and sort of making judgment calls about things like this. Yeah, scaling down this early seems, I don't know.
It seems interesting. There are lots of possibilities in this particular case, and I'm ever aware that there are people that are connected to the family and the police living, so one likes to tread fairly wary.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to be careful because you've got to respect the family until because the family, they're just distraught, I would imagine. Definitely the children are. You could see that. And probably Mick is, we don't know the background to their relationship. We don't know that he's not distraught, do we? But yeah, it's funny him saying that, because that's exactly, I just feel that when they stopped the search so soon, but said to people as though, oh, well, if you want to search, you can if you like, we won't stop you searching, but we're not going to search anymore. That was quite strange, because I do feel that if they thought there was any chance of finding Samantha alive there on the trail, if they thought she was literally there somewhere, definitely, they would not have stopped that search, not as early as they did anyway. I really do believe that. And now he's saying the same thing, and he knows, he's an ex-policeman himself.
But we are a true crime podcast. That, of course, is inferring that there is actually a crime.
My issue, Dad, is that I'm sitting here going, okay, let's just say you are...
It's true. We're talking about this on true crime, same with me, but we don't know yet that there has been a crime. We don't know.
related. And the police are remaining tight-lipped. They're staying tight-lipped and vague and very coy and, strategically maybe. And then you have true crime podcasters going, nah, she's definitely dead. Or you have people getting online or even on a current affair or whatever saying, yeah, it's suspicious. I don't know how I would feel about that because the different narratives clearly aren't helping. Sometimes I think maybe the police release a specific angle because maybe the police want the public to think one thing and maybe it's strategic. And then later on, you find out that they did that because, I don't know.
I agree with you. I think sometimes police do act strategically. A couple of people from Australia who've come over, to be subscribers on my channel made comments have linked it to the Cleo case of the little girl who went missing, where everybody thought the police weren't doing anything. And then suddenly it turns out, that was a happy ending. Little Cleo was found safe and well. Maybe I need to do a video on that one day because I don't normally like to do videos about children because it's got a happy ending. I would quite like to do it probably, but yeah. And they've used that as an example of times when they thought the police weren't doing anything. I'm talking about specifically about Australia now, but it's probably the same in all countries. It happened in America with the Brown, with the Idaho 4. Everybody was complaining saying the police weren't doing anything, but it turned out they were doing a lot. And then they caught him. Next minute they arrested him. So I always think when the police go very quiet, sometimes it's normally always because they actually do know a lot more.
Could scaling back, refusing to say whether it's suspicious or not, because the police haven't officially stated whether or not, they haven't confirmed whether they're treating it like it's a suspicious kind of circumstance. Could that be deliberate, or do they just not know what's going on and they're sort of flying in different directions? Like, what is your opinion on that?
Okay, well, one has to sort of be very, from an analytical sort of accountancy, budgetary perspective, one has to think that there are bean counters. It's a very costly exercise. They have limited resources. They have resources that have to be shared. We don't know about other cases happening within that area.
Now, this is something that's come up again and again, isn't it? And it's probably the same in Australia, maybe, as it is in Britain. And that was something I said a lot in the Nicola Bulley case, that a lot of the problems were the lack of resources and the fact that everything just went wrong from day one. And anyway, there was something else. The other case that I'm following at the moment of Anna, who's gone missing in Madrid. I was listening to a Spanish podcast about that, and they were saying that on that same day that Anna was reported missing, there were also 7 other people reported missing in Madrid. So, everyone, where do the people's... But I do think with Anna's case, as people go missing, and with Anna's case, there definitely are suspicious circumstances, because if you've been watching my videos about Anna, who's gone missing in Madrid, somebody actually went and sprayed out her CCTV in her apartment block, and on the door cam, a man in a black helmet, so that we don't know it's a motorcycle helmet or what, was actually seen on the CCTV spraying out the CCTV and the door cam. So that is a definite suspicious. You can't just call that missing, no suspicious circumstances. We don't have that with Samantha. There is, as far as we know, no reason to believe, apart from the fact that she's disappeared, that she has been abducted. There's no evidence. There's no, as far as we know, again, we don't know anything for sure. But whereas in Anna's case in Madrid, there's definitely foul play, because when somebody goes and spray paints out a CCTV in a black helmet so they can't be seen who they are, there's suspicious circumstances. And I still think with Anna, there's something almost professional about, and the best case scenario with Anna is that she's been held somewhere, that she's been kidnapped and she's been held somewhere. But, whereas with Samantha, there is no evidence as far as we know.
There could be covert operations, completely 100% unrelated to this case, but it has to divert funds and manpower to other. It's not the only thing happening. So you can't just be looking sort of for.
It's awful, isn't it, to think of it like that? But it's true. But it's not the only thing happening. But for that family, it is the only thing happening. But and same for Anna or anyone who's when your loved one goes missing, for you and your family and their friends, it is the only thing happening. But in the cold reality of bloody resources and police resources, etc., it isn't the only thing happening. It's very sad to think of it like that. I don't like thinking, because everybody's important.
Eternity. Yes, there are going to be people, family members, friends, people that are perhaps retired, people that do shift work that have got some extra time, and they're going to maintain the vigil. They're going to keep that candle alight. But as time drags on, it's like the big things in the world. I mean, let's take momentarily the war in Ukraine. It's in our nature. It's not possible for it to maintain front page for so long. I mean, when I found out that particular situation's in its third year, Paul.
Yeah, I think it's called trauma fatigue, where something might even be getting worse and desperately needs our attention. But
I know,
it's like it wears out its welcome. Or
exactly,
something.
but not for the family.
No, fuck no,
Okay.
no. It gets worse and more important than ever, and you need to stay vigilant. Yes,
true. Now, I'm not going to. Well, I am probably make a slight against, or sort of discuss a particular industry that has, generally speaking, it's a lot cleaner today. But when I was in the police force in the 1980s, one of the most notorious, let's say, businesses certainly in Sydney and probably across Australia, that was notoriously run by criminals, was the smash repair business. And so if I'm going to...
Oh my gosh, well that is, oh my gosh, that's got, that's a significant, because of course, Samantha's husband, Mick, that's his business, so that's their business, because she apparently deals with the figures, etc., the accounts. That's exactly what they do, smash repair business. That's quite significant, isn't it, what he's just said?
To be very honest, sit here with a clear mind, as I did at the very beginning of this case, or perhaps a few days into it. One of the alarm bells for me, and I don't know whether this is an alarm bell for the investigating police, one would hope so, at least to give it some credence, is that the family own a smash repair business. Okay? Now,
oh my God.
In a country town, smash repair business, on the balance of probabilities, absolutely squeaky clean. But
with the American Express Platinum card, you could get used to this.
Hey, you have to see this view.
Elevate your next trip with $450 to spend on travel each year. Search Amex Platinum today. See website for details. Exclusions, T's and C's apply.
Can I order the smashed avo without the avo?
Mate, why cut out life's little luxuries when HBF Hospital and Extras cover may cost less than you think?
Join HBF today. HBF. Cost of cover will vary depending on policy selected.
Life can be hard sometimes,
Oh, for goodness
but there are
sake.
lots of little things you can do that can make
How
a
many
difference.
adverts?
It might be grabbing lunch with a friend, calling mates instead of texting, trying a new hobby, or spending a little time with your dog at the park. Try exploring to see what works for you. Find your way to okay.
Still 9 seconds of the advert to go. Sorry about that. But let me just say, just so we don't get too bored of the adverts, that's very interesting, isn't it? What he's saying, smash and repair. But he did say that probably because it's in a country place like that it's probably squeaky clean. But of course, they will be looking into all of Mick's business affairs and Samantha. They will look into that. Of course they will.
Get ideas at thinkmentalhealthwa.com.au.
If there was a smash repair business, similar story in Western Sydney, the police I know would be looking at aspects relating to that, the nature of the industry,
Right.
because it's infiltrated by organised crime.
Yeah.
Car rebirthing. A few years ago, one of my prized utes was stolen, and about a week later, I was informed by the New South Wales Police Force and my insurer, and that was stolen on the Northern Beaches, that was the 165th Toyota Hilux ute stolen within a few weeks.
Jesus
Okay?
Christ.
165 stolen.
Yeah.
And they were rebirthing them.
165 stolen in 1 week. And rebirthing, I suppose what he means by that is they get a respray and then they get a new matricular, a new registration plate, and that and get sold on.
They cut them in two. They get the identification and they simply mix them around, weld them, and just reissue. Yeah. So it's a huge business. So there's that thing to think about. Then of course there's the S word that I'm going to use because it's like dancing around something and not saying it because people feel uncomfortable, and that is that the person. These are things that clearly the police think about, is that the person took their own life. However, one would imagine, you'll note that in this particular story, at the bottom of all...
Now, I have to say that in this case, that is one thing, until he actually mentioned it, that never even occurred to me that this might be an S. Self-deletion hasn't, until he said that, then literally has not occurred to me. So of course it's always a possibility, anything's a possibility, and even though she certainly didn't seem as if, did she, that she was planning on doing anything like that, but then you just never know. You just do not know. Yeah.
Articles, they don't have any reference to, if this is causing distress, contact Lifeline.
Right.
Now, there's no mention of that,
right,
which is interesting, which hopefully means that that's not something that is to be considered. Then there's the glaring possibility that it's an accident. I've given this great thought. There are a lot of mine shafts in that area. However, almost all of them are very shallow. The deep ones have been covered over with grate. Also, she's an experienced runner. She's going to be keeping to a track. If you're an offender lying in waiting, you're going to be waiting near the track, because on the balance of probabilities, particularly if you know the area intimately, that someone at some stage is going to come along.
Yeah.
And if your propensity is to attack a woman, then it's a numbers game. There's someone has got extreme local knowledge. There's also the possibility that the woman was followed from home, and it's very much because if she's got a routine, routine is the easiest thing for a criminal, particularly in a country town.
Yeah, and now in my little town that I live in, my little village, people got the routines. You would know exactly what people are doing every morning. I know it's like it goes down my street. The guy the first person who goes off to work at about 5 a.m, and somebody goes off on their motorbike, and somebody goes off to take their children to the high school, their teenagers, and then they go and I could literally set my watch by the routine of what. I don't even have to move out my living room. I can just hear it going on along my street. All the routine, you could almost like check off each one. And I used to have that routine, but I really do try. I never take my dogs out at the same time every day. go all different times. And this is what I would recommend to any woman who's thinking, oh my God, how can you possibly be safe? And I've said it before, because you shouldn't stop doing the things that you've always done. You shouldn't let it curtail your freedom, but you've just got to be aware. Change your route, change your time that you go. Never go just the same time every day, the same route. So, be careful with apps like Strava and things like that I think people can access what you're doing and where you're walking. Take pepper spray, hairspray, something, that you can sort of use to, if the worst happens and you do get attacked. And to me, earbuds, your earpods where you're listening to music, definitely not. You've got to be aware of what noises are going on, and stay as open as possible. Where you go, make sure it's as open as possible. That's all you can do, is try your very best to be safe. And of course, maybe run or walk with somebody else, not just on your own. But I don't think you should be, you should stop doing it on your own. You should carry on doing it, but you've just got to do everything you can to be safe. Because the thing is, yes, you could get attacked running on a trail, but you could get run over crossing over the road. You could get attacked on the street. I remember reading about a poor woman sat in her house watching the telly and a crane fell on top of her house. You have no way of knowing what might happen, so you shouldn't let it stop you doing the things that you enjoy. Definitely not. Just be more aware.
Paul, you and Tegan, where you live, you can look out your lounge room window and see things that you almost expect to see because you know your environment intimately.
Yeah.
You know the sounds, we all become so inextricably intertwined with our environment. So I hope that nothing bad has happened, but the problem with this particular case is that we're getting into some pretty extended time. If she's been injured, it must be a very, very, very serious injury for her not to be able to crawl or climb.
Yeah. Prone.
If I was to give my opinion as to the outcome of this particular case, based on the information I have at this point in time, bearing in mind the police, we don't know everything that's happening, but the scaling down, the family's plea, which was very emotional. The girl, the daughter, being one of 3 children. She's 51. This woman, she's she's smart. She's something could have happened that was just completely out of the blue. I mean, if you're running along a track, the last thing you expect is for someone to jump out and bash you.
Well, I mean, it's bushland, and I'm looking at the map here of where she lives on Eureka Street and the search area. And they've kind of moved the search area south a little bit. They've expanded it towards a place called Buninyong. They haven't seen any footage of her on CCTV, so they can't verify much at all. And obviously, it's a small town, and they're not going to have CCTV around a regional park like this where she was running. I mean, out near where Tegan's parents live in rural Gippsland, there are big stretches of, basically national park and bushland and stuff with trails that really only 4-wheel drives can traverse. And so we go jogging there or hiking there occasionally, at least when it's not, on fire. And one of the things we keep coming up with is the fact that there's just, you never see people.
At least when it's not on fire, my God.
Really. Occasionally you'll see a car in the distance when you're heading back to yours. But basically, this area she was running in is very similar. It's very quiet. It's very isolated. These tracks occasionally will have, 4-wheel drive people there. I think we hear joyriders on motorbikes in these areas. But like you said, apparently there's mine shafts. There's they've got volunteers out looking, and they've got I think they've got sniffer dogs out as well.
That's good. Sniffer
Yeah.
dogs.
Which is really good.
Yeah. Look, my feeling, and I'd be very, very happy to be proven wrong, but I feel that she's met with foul play. That's my feeling, based on the information I've got.
The thing is, that's his intuition, isn't it? You know, he's been a policeman for a long time. Policemen develop, they call it hunches, don't they? So it's funny because, you know, people sort of poo-poo like psychics and things like that. But really, being a psychic, you are acting on intuition, and anyone can develop intuition. A hunch, that's what it is. It's just that spidey sense that something's wrong. That's what psychics do, but that's call it a psychic, and people sort of call them like, oh, self-proclaimed psychics, etc., or, you know, a bit sniffy about it. But if you know, the policeman says they've got a hunch, people listen to them because these are based on experience. And we all get these hunches, intuition, feelings about things. And normally we're proven right, aren't we? You know, I still haven't learned completely to trust my instinct, but, you know, I'm always proved right. You know, rare that I'm not. I can't even think of the last time I wasn't. And sometimes I get an instinct about something and I think, oh, no. And you try and put it down, don't you? Shove it down because you think, no, I shouldn't think that, especially if it's about a person. And, you know, you get a bad vibe off a person at first sometimes. And you don't know why, because they haven't done anything, but you just know that, you know, I've been proved right about that a million times. And I don't know why I still try and choke that down and say, no, you know, give them a second chance. But I'm always right in the end. Even just listening to someone's voice sometimes, I know what sort of person they are before they show you the sort of person that they are. But so that's his instinct that she's met with foul play, and that's his instinct or his hunch honed over years of being a detective, or, you know, you do develop an instinct.
My experience, my gut feeling, and gut feeling is not to be dismissed. That plays an important role. Sometimes think outside the square. You know, there would be detectives who are very experienced. They brought in the missing persons detective unit, which is interesting because we didn't have that back in the early days. And they will be coming up with some extraordinary scenarios. And you have to, because when you're dealing with potentially a crime, because one of the things that if it is a crime, that the person who is the offender has, there are two scenarios, of course. There's the scenario that something terrible's happened, the crime has been committed, and the person, the victim, has been buried. The other more interesting, sinister, complex theory is, of course, that the person is still alive, which creates all sorts of other problems.
That feels like it's entering into a sort of odd conspiracy-ish area, whereas actually, I mean, the facts are, the family of a 51-year-old woman who went missing while jogging about 11 days ago in a small country town are extraordinarily upset and are making heartfelt appeals to the press. The community is reaching out. Small towns have all kinds of stuff going on. Fucking hell. I can see why this case is so captivating, but really it does come from a place of concern, because the fact is, it's just, she's a mum who went out for a jog, right? The place where she went jogging is about 10 minutes from the CBD in Ballarat, which means it's not bushland, right? It's not like she's in the middle of the forest. It's a little...
I think it's important there what he said, because what his dad said before he sort of stopped him in his tracks a bit, he's probably thinking, oh, shouldn't be saying these things, because, you know, they won't be wanting to upset the family. there is a chance that she has been abducted and she's still alive somewhere, and somebody's keeping her somewhere, and she may be released. Or he actually mentioned about burying there, which that's horrible to think about, isn't it? But it's possible that she's been buried somewhere. But would the dogs not have picked that up? But then, of course, she could be anywhere. So it is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But that Apple Watch is going to be relevant in this, the watch and the phone things that the police have not released information about yet. There's a reason for that.
Basically think of it as like an area of scrubland just outside a busy area, which means technically, and tourism is not out of the question in Ballarat. People do come to visit, right? Which means she's actually within 10 minutes of walking distance of where tourists could be, which means it could be someone from outside of Ballarat. It doesn't have to be a local. This isn't like that thing we watched, that place in Laramie. Remember that?
And that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. It could be a tourist, could just be being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It doesn't have to necessarily be a local that's done it.
Terrifying, depressing true crime series in that small town up in northern Australia with 7 people. This is not that. Ballarat is a thriving place. Okay, so for those of you outside of Australia, when we talk about bushland and a country town, this is not a typical version of
True.
that.
Paul, another thing that the police would have done fairly quickly is eliminate members of the family.
Gotcha.
That's very important, as in not eliminate as in get rid of them.
No, I know.
But, that has to be considered because there have been so many cases.
Yeah.
Classic cases. There have been cases in and around Sydney and in every city and lots of towns across the world where, of course, ultimately one finds out that, it was someone close. So they have to eliminate all these people. If they don't do that, it's not good police work. But as time goes by, of course, people's imagination obviously starts to go crazy.
Yeah.
And people, that's why I hope we've done this in a fairly measured, respectful way. And I hope, actually, every day I do check the ABC news feed just to see.
Yeah, like me, every morning when I get up, because that'll have been like coming to the end of the day, I think, in Australia. And then every evening when it's like the beginning of the day in Australia, I'm always checking the news.
If they found her. So, I'm concerned, but then don't forget about all the other missing people in Australia and everywhere. And for all those families that never ever get over it.
Yeah.
And listeners, if you want to just sort of put yourself in you can't really put yourself in those shoes. There may be some listeners that have experienced this firsthand.
That's what I was saying this morning. I do think you unless you've actually experienced it, you cannot know exactly how it feels to have a loved one go missing. And then we talked about it in the previous video, when someone's missing for long term, like the lady that set up the missing persons help thing. Her brother had been missing for 12 years. So yeah, we mustn't forget all the other missing people, and we definitely, the most thing we should not forget the family and the friends of these people that have no resolution.
The sense of dread it's just terrible. And sometimes when really bad things happen, you think, well, why couldn't something really good have happened? I guess the opposite to something really bad is winning the lottery. But the odds are equally small, thank God. So you might say, oh...
That's interesting. He's very interesting, this guy. Yeah, the odds of you winning the lottery. I remember reading once that you had more chance of getting caught up in a terrorist attack than you did of winning the lottery, and again then of someone going missing. The thing is, when you watch a lot of true crime, like I do, like we do, sometimes you can start thinking, oh my God, this is just happening all the time. But of course, we're covering these missing people all over the world, so generally the percentage of people that go, percentage-wise, there's not, you're unlikely to know of somebody who's gone missing, same as somebody who's been murdered. But I think that depends where you live, doesn't it? It depends where you live, the area you live in, the circles that you move in. But some people will go their whole life, they'll never know of anyone who was missing or anyone who was murdered, and other people, they may, get a different experience.
I've gone in this lottery so many times and I've never won anything, and it's just ridiculous. But you can also thank your lucky stars by saying, you know what, I might not win the lottery, but also I've never lost anyone to something terrible. Most people go through life and it's just fairly, no, I won't say mundane, but, the natural process just evolves, and terrible things that we read about. And also we've mentioned that, Paul, our podcast exists because of terrible things happening.
Yeah.
Which is just so, I question that sometimes. But I like
this, guys. It's so true. It's the same with me. It's like I don't have this fascination with true crime. But you always have to be respectful about it, because these are real people. And my interest in true crime started because of my own experiences of being stalked, and then, just a tragic end to the whole thing. But luckily I survived. So, you do question it. Sometimes I think, why am I doing this? The Counting Dead Women video that I did, I, got halfway through it, well, not even halfway through it, and was thinking, what the hell am I doing this for? But I do think it's important. The thing is, these women, or any case, they deserve a voice when they don't have a voice any longer to tell their story. Their stories are important. We should not forget, what's happened to these people. There's no point in burying your head in the sand and thinking, oh, la 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 la. If I do that, then women aren't being murdered all the time. Yes, they are. They're being murdered. So you've got to face up to it sometimes, but you've not to dwell on it, because you can't change. Well, you can change it. You've got to keep talking about it, as well as living your life and not getting consumed by it, I think. Because, not all men are awful. Not all women are perfect. There's a lot of women do terrible things as well. So you've just got to stay balanced about it. But I think you must not forget these people that have gone through these awful things, because they deserve a voice. But yeah, it's difficult. You've just got to strike the balance and try and be respectful. That's what I try to do. I hope I don't ever upset and be awful. I would definitely not want to upset the family or friends of anyone that something had happened to, especially if they had nothing to do with it. So, but having said that, I do think it's important as well.
like to think that we speak with compassion, and clearly when we do our live shows, there's a sense of, look, I think we do things, as you say, in a respectful way, and it's important.
Yeah.
But I really do hope that this has a positive outcome.
Oh my God, me too. I mean, if you literally head to Google, whack in the news, and type in Samantha Murphy, you will get the latest headlines. And at this point, the latest is, last night, it's been branded suspicious. Dad, it is now regarded as suspicious.
Right.
That's
okay.
it.
Well,
that's the update.
Yeah. Well, that's sad.
Fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what happens when a case is happening and unfolding live, and we're doing a podcast based on information which we checked last night. Jesus Christ, this is recent. Okay, so I'll read this. Police have revealed a change of direction in their investigation into how mother of 3 Samantha Murphy vanished 10 days ago. Victoria's police chief has admitted there are suspicious circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Ballarat mum Samantha Murphy. Okay. And this is a very recent update. Now, folks, of course, you'll be hearing this a day after. And this is the problem, because we're releasing this. You know what, Dad?
Mm-hmm.
Should I release it today? No, it's okay. We're releasing this a day after we record it, which means by the time you hear this episode, they may have good news or bad news. Things may have evolved, but we are literally stuck in this cycle because, typically speaking, we're either dealing with Dad's cases from the 80s, in which case, you know, the statute of limitations has long since passed, or we're talking about Australian or international true crime, which is already in the public record, in which case it's, you know, already being dealt with. But at this point, yeah, it's now being considered suspicious. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to end up the way it could end up, but it does mean that the detectives are now considering some of the worst case scenarios. I cannot express just how ardently our fucking fingers and toes are crossed that Samantha comes through okay, that her family is okay, that the community is okay. But we will endeavor to keep you updated, and obviously all of you will do what you usually do, and that is stay in touch with us and keep us updated. And we really appreciate you all being on it so much. But look, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Loose Units, Loose Ends, our weekly spin-off podcast. We will be back next week, first thing in the week, well, Tuesday morning, with Loose Units, The Shadow Files, and the...
Okay, so that was a very interesting podcast, and I'm really glad that I found that. I've just tried to follow them. But it says add this podcast or not. I don't really oh no, it's taking me somewhere else. How do I do that? What? I don't know how to do that. But anyway, go over, give them a visit. Loose Units, the podcast. I will look into how I can follow that. I did find that very interesting. Glad I listened to it. And you know, I hope you found it interesting as well. And I'm going to release this video as a premiere, so it won't be a live, but we can have a little chat about it. Now, what I just want to look at before I finish is the latest news. Just search if there is any other news before I go. This, I feel that one day, you know, this may be quiet for a while, and then suddenly, you know, that it's just going to, you know, blow up. Because sooner or later, I hope so. I hope it's not going to turn into a cold case, or like Rachel Marin, where her murderer still hasn't been caught. But no, there's no news at the moment, so no fresh news as I'm finishing off this video. But I'm going to put it out as a premiere for about half an hour from now. And okay, thank you for watching. I'll be back with more updates as soon as there are any. And remember to live and love carefully, wisely. And I will see you, as always, in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. Bye.